Mia's doll had arrived one crisp afternoon in early autumn. Nestled in a box wrapped with bright pink paper and tied with a satin ribbon. It was a gift from her grandmother, who'd passed 2 weeks earlier and left this single package behind. Mia's parents, Elise and Grant, found no note, just the doll itself. A porcelain figure with soft ringlets of blonde hair and painted blue eyes. She wore a frilly white dress with lace trim and miniature white shoes. Mia had fallen in love at first sight. "Her name is Annabelle," Mia said quietly, holding the doll close to her chest. She was only 6, but her voice carried a certain surety. "She likes to be rocked to sleep." Elise kneeled down to her daughter's level. "Mia, honey, how do you know her name?" Mia smiled, a dreamy, distant look. "She told me." It seemed harmless. Children often invent personalities for their toys. Elise and Grant exchanged a glance, shrugged, and dismissed it as imaginative play. That night at dinner, Mia pulled a chair beside her at the table. "Annabelle needs a plate," she insisted, lifting the doll to show her parents. "She's hungry." Grant chuckled. "Sweetie, dolls don't need plates. They're not real." Mia's face fell. "She is real, Daddy. She's sitting right here." She moved the doll's arms delicately, as if to prove the point. Annabelle's glassy eyes caught the overhead light, seeming momentarily alive. Elise, soft-hearted, relented. She fetched a small saucer and laid it beside Mia's plate. "There we go," she said gently. "Now Annabelle can join us." Mia's mood brightened. "Thank you, Mummy." She spoke in a sing-song whisper. "See, Annabelle? They understand." In the following days, Mia integrated Annabelle into every aspect of their lives. The doll slept in Mia's bed, tucked under the covers. Mia insisted on setting a bedtime routine. Annabelle needed a lullaby, a light kiss on the forehead, and the curtains drawn at a certain angle so the moon can smile at her. Elise and Grant found it endearing, if a bit odd. They were happy their daughter had found comfort in the new toy. Mia had been a quiet child, prone to playing on her own. This was just another phase. The first accident happened 1 week later. Grant was in the garage, fixing the old wooden shelf that would go in Mia's room. As he crouched to pick up a screwdriver, a sudden snap sounded above him. The heavy overhead storage unit collapsed without warning, narrowly missing him. A rain of old paint cans and tools crashed to the floor. Shaken, Grant scrambled back. If he'd been a foot further forward, it would have hit him squarely on the head. Elise rushed in after hearing the clamour. "Grant, are you okay?" He nodded, pale. "I'm fine. The bracket just let go." They inspected the bracket and found it twisted. Strange, since Grant had installed it himself 2 years ago, and it had held well until now. Elise frowned, but they wrote it off as old hardware weakening over time. Mia stood at the kitchen door. Annabelle clutched tight against her little chest. She didn't say a word, but a solemn, knowing look passed over her face. A few days later, while Elise was cooking dinner, the stove's gas knob refused to turn off properly. The flame whooshed up unexpectedly, singeing Elise's wrist. She yelped and jerked back, knocking a pot to the floor. Grant rushed in, found the stove leaking gas, even though it should have been shut off. He fiddled with it, managed to close the valve. They were both rattled. Mia watched from the doorway again, her doll's painted eyes reflecting the kitchen light. Without prompting, Mia spoke softly. "Annabelle doesn't like the smell of gas. She thinks it's dangerous." Elise blinked, startled by the odd comment. "Yes, it is dangerous, sweetheart," she said, forcing a reassuring smile. "But Mummy's okay." Mia didn't smile back. She stroked the doll's hair and said nothing more. The atmosphere in the home shifted subtly. Doors that had once glided open now stuck. A picture frame holding a family photo fell from the hallway wall, shattering glass across the floor. Grant's car engine sputtered inexplicably in the mornings. Each time something went wrong, Mia was never far away, Annabelle cradled in her arms. Elise and Grant began to feel uneasy. They worried that Mia's attachment to the doll had grown too intense. Should they ask her to put Annabelle away for a while? But Mia was so gentle with her toy, and after all, she was just a child playing pretend. Yet there was something in Mia's eyes that bothered Elise. A calm detachment, a secret knowledge. The way Mia would sometimes stand at the edge of a room, clutching Annabelle, and watch her parents with unwavering concentration. It was as if she was waiting for something. As October deepened, the evenings turned dark and cold. One night, Mia refused to go to bed until they'd kissed Annabelle goodnight as well. Elise, tired from a long day, obliged, pressing a quick kiss to the doll's ceramic cheek. The porcelain was cold. Grant sighed and did the same. Mia watched, satisfied. "Annabelle says thank you," Mia whispered. "She loves you." Elise felt a sudden prick of tears for reasons she couldn't explain. "We love you too, sweetheart," she said softly, kissing Mia's forehead. Mia smiled, placed Annabelle on the pillow beside her, and fell asleep almost instantly. Elise turned off the light and backed out of the room. In the hallway, Grant took her hand. "We should talk to her about the doll," he said quietly. Elise nodded. "Tomorrow," she said. "Let's give her a few weeks. She's just a child." Grant didn't push it. A storm rolled in that night. Rain battered the windows, and the wind moaned through the eaves. Elise and Grant lay awake in bed, listening. Around midnight, Elise thought she heard small footsteps scuttling through the hall. She assumed it was Mia heading to the bathroom, but the footsteps passed by their door and didn't return. In the morning, Elise found muddy footprints in the kitchen, small and delicate. Mia's slippers by the door were dry and clean. Confused, Elise searched the house but found no source. The front door was locked. Mia was still asleep upstairs. Elise glanced at Annabelle, perched on the nightstand beside Mia's bed. A ridiculous thought flickered. Could the doll have walked downstairs? She dismissed it instantly and tried to think logically. Maybe a window leak caused the strange pattern on the floor. She grabbed a mop and wiped the mud away, her heart tight in her chest. They decided to talk to Mia that afternoon. Over hot cocoa, Elise cleared her throat. "Mia, honey," she began. "Daddy and I have noticed you really love Annabelle. That's wonderful. But you know she's just a toy, right?" Mia's brow furrowed. "No, she's not just a toy," she said quietly. "She's my sister." Grant blinked. "Your sister? But you have no brothers or sisters, Mia." Mia pressed her lips together. She stroked Annabelle's hair. "She told me. She said she was here before, but something happened and she couldn't stay." Mia's eyes were distant, as if recalling someone else's memory. "She died before I was born." She said this without fear or uncertainty, just stating a fact. Elise's heart thumped painfully. The mention of a child lost before Mia's birth. They'd never told her about that. Elise and Grant had lost a baby girl in the 7th month of pregnancy, long before Mia came along. They never planned to burden her with that sad secret. "How do you know that name?" Elise managed to ask, her voice shaky. "I never said her name," Mia replied softly. "She didn't tell me a name. Just that she's my big sister, and she's come back so we can be together. She says you've both been lying to me. She says you don't want her here." Grant and Elise exchanged a horrified look. How could Mia know this? They'd never spoken aloud about the lost pregnancy since Mia was born. Mia's lower lip trembled. She clutched Annabelle protectively. Elise reached for Mia's hand. "Sweetheart, we..." Before Elise could continue, Mia wrenched her hand free, jumped off of her chair, and ran upstairs. They heard her bedroom door slam. Grant's shoulders slumped. Elise felt tears burning in her eyes. This was impossible. Mia had somehow conjured details that were too close to their painful past. That evening, while Elise tried to coax Mia out of her room, Grant decided to do some research. He rummaged through old photo albums in the attic, searching for anything that might tie Annabelle to their past. In an old trunk, he found a small box containing a faded ultrasound photo and a pink knitted cap meant for the baby that never came home. His throat tightened. On the ultrasound photo, they'd scribbled a name: Annabelle. Chosen too soon. Hope cut short by tragedy. Annabelle would have been Mia's older sister had she survived. Grant was trembling as he descended the attic steps. He'd never told Mia this name, never shown her these things. Yet the doll's name, Mia's insistence it was her sister, this was no coincidence. He raced to Mia's room, calling Elise. They found Mia sitting on the floor, Annabelle in her lap. Mia turned her tear-streaked face to them. "She wants you to understand," she whispered. "She says you took her away. You replaced her with me. She's angry." Elise knelt. "Mia, we loved Annabelle very much," she choked out, tears falling. "We never wanted to lose her." Mia nodded, sniffing. She says you never told me about her. Never let me know my big sister. You pretended like she never existed." Grant stepped closer. "We're sorry, Mia. We were hurt. We didn't know how to tell you." He looked at the doll, its painted blue eyes unblinking. "But Annabelle, this doll is not your sister. Your sister's gone." Mia looked down at the doll. "She says she's not gone. She's right here." A sudden chill swept through the room, and the lamp flickered. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elise's breath caught as a whisper, faint but real, slipped through the silence. It seemed to come from the doll, an impossible hush of sound. "Mia, don't listen." Elise recoiled. Grant stood, jaw clenched. "This is madness," Grant murmured, voice trembling. He reached for the doll. "We have to end this now." Mia screamed. "No, don't touch her." But Grant had already grabbed the doll's arm. The porcelain was icy cold. As Grant tried to pull it from Mia's grasp, he felt something resist, as if the doll weighed more than expected. Suddenly, the glass lamp on the nightstand shattered, spraying shards across the floor. Elise cried out, shielding her face. Mia sobbed and clung to Annabelle with desperate strength. "Enough," Grant shouted. "This has to stop." He wrenched the doll free from Mia's arms. Mia shrieked, scrambling after him. Elise held Mia back, tears flooding in her eyes. Grant stomped from the room. "I'm locking this thing away," he said. He headed down the hall, intending to seal the doll in a box in the garage. Elise followed, carrying a sobbing Mia. In the hallway, the air felt thick and charged. Without warning, the overhead light exploded. Grant stumbled, and something unseen tugged at his ankle. He fell forward, doll still clutched to his chest, and nearly tumbled down the stairs. Elise gasped, tightening her grip on Mia. Grant regained his balance at the top step. "This is insane," he muttered. "We have to leave this house." But as he turned, the banister rail snapped as if struck by an invisible force. It launched a wooden shard into Grant's side. He howled in pain and dropped the doll. Mia screamed. Elise rushed forward, pulling Mia close, trying to reach Grant. Blood seeped through his shirt. The doll rolled down 2 steps and came to a rest upside down. Its painted eyes faced them, cold and judging. Mia broke free of Elise's grasp and ran down the hall, disappearing into her parents' bedroom. Elise cried out, "Mia, come back!" Grant tried to stand, wincing, hand pressed to his wound. "We have to get Mia and leave," he panted. Elise nodded, tears blurring her vision. They descended carefully, stepping around the fallen doll. Elise picked it up cautiously, determined to lock it away. But the moment her hand closed over its porcelain body, her arms jerked violently. As if guided by a brutal puppeteer, Elise's own arms swung the doll upward, smashing it into the side of Grant's head. He staggered, eyes wide with shock. Elise tried to stop, but couldn't control her movements. The doll in her hand pulled at her muscles, forcing another blow. Crack. Grant fell, tumbling down the stairs to the landing below. He lay still. Elise screamed in horror. Her voice echoed through the hallway. She dropped the doll, her hand shaking uncontrollably. Mia peeked around the corner upstairs, her eyes huge and tearful. "What did you do?" she whispered, voice trembling. Elise sobbed. I couldn't stop." She rushed down to Grant's side, calling his name. He was breathing shallowly, blood trickling from a gash on his head. She had to get him out of here. Call an ambulance. As Elise pulled out her phone, the device sparked. The lights flickered again. She looked at the doll lying on the steps, dread filling her heart. "You're not my child," she hissed at the lifeless thing. "You're not Annabelle. Leave us alone." A harsh whisper filled the air. "You abandoned me." Elise's blood ran cold. The voice sounded both childlike and ancient. "You never told her about me. You pretended I never existed." Elise shook her head. "We were grieving. We never meant." The doll rose upright without being touched, perching on its porcelain feet. Elise choked back a scream. Mia cried upstairs, "Don't hurt Mummy, Annabelle, please." The doll's head swiveled towards the sound of Mia's voice. Elise saw her chance. She hurled herself forward, intending to knock the doll down the stairs, maybe smash it to pieces. But before she could reach it, the doll raised an arm. A force like a punch to the chest knocked Elise back. She slammed into the wall, pain blossoming in her ribs. Grant moaned below, barely conscious. Elise crawled towards him, tears streaming. "We have to run," she gasped to him. "We have to get Mia." But the doll leaped, or was flung by invisible hands, onto Grant. He tried to bat it away, but his movements were sluggish, dazed. The doll pressed its tiny hand against Grant's throat. Elise saw with horror that the porcelain fingers elongated, darkening, turning into something sharp and bony. Grant's eyes widened. "No!" Elise screamed, scrambling up the steps. Mia was screaming too, pleading with Annabelle to stop. But the doll ignored their cries. With a cruel snap, it tightened its grip. Grant's thrashing slowed, then ceased altogether. Elise collapsed onto the stairs, sobbing uncontrollably. She heard Mia's footsteps behind her, felt her daughter's small hand on her shoulder. Mia's voice was a broken whisper. "Mummy, please save Daddy." But it was too late. Grant lay still and silent at the bottom of the steps, eyes staring emptily at the ceiling. The doll turned its head towards mother and child. Elise scooped Mia into her arms, trembling. They had to get out. The front door was just a few steps away, if they could just get past the doll. Elise stood, supporting Mia's weight on her hip. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged down the stairs, vaulting over Grant's body. and rushed for the door. An unseen force slammed the door shut. Elise turned the knob desperately. Locked. Another blow from behind hit her legs, making her stumble. Mia screamed, clinging to Elise's neck. The doll was behind them, silent and implacable. Elise spun, shielding Mia. "Please," Elise begged, voice cracking. "She's your sister. Don't hurt her. You can have me, just don't harm Mia." The doll's painted lips parted. No longer delicate porcelain, but something fleshy and twisted. In a voice like cracking ice, it hissed, "I want her alone, forever and ever." Elise's heart shattered. She pushed Mia behind her, determination flooding through her. "You'll never have her," she said. Elise looked around frantically. There, a heavy iron candlestick on a side table. If she could just smash it. But the doll was faster. It darted forward with unnatural speed. Elise raised her arm. Too slow. In an instant, Elise felt a cold, sharp agony in her chest. She looked down to see porcelain fingers protruding from the doll's sleeve, piercing her heart as if her ribcage was made of paper. She coughed, blood flecking her lips. The world tilted. Mia shrieked. She tried to grab Elise's arm, to pull her away, but the doll yanked back, forcing Elise's body to collapse to the floor. Elise's eyes fluttered, reaching out to Mia one last time. She tried to form words, "I love you," but only blood came out. The doll turned its hollow gaze on Mia. The little girl trembled, tears coursing down her cheeks. "Why?" she whispered. The doll's posture softened. It reached out a hand, gently this time, beckoning Mia closer. "Because they kept us apart," it whispered. Now it sounded like a young girl, heartbreakingly sweet. "We're sisters, Mia. We belong together. No one else. Just you and me. Forever and ever." Mia sobbed, but with her parents lying still and cold on the floor, the world offered no solace. She was alone, a 6-year-old in an empty house. She reached for the doll's hand. The porcelain felt warm now, pulsing with a strange life. Mia felt dizzy, hollowed out by grief. Outside, the storm had passed. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. The doll stood beside Mia, tilting its head. Eyes no longer glassy, but shining with a grim vitality. Mia's tears slowed. She pressed her cheek to the doll's soft hair. The scent of her lost mother's perfume still lingered in the air, but Mia pushed the memory aside. The doll placed a small hand in Mia's. Together, they stepped over the still bodies, moving into the living room. Mia would learn to live in a quiet house. Just her and Annabelle. She'd set the table for 2 from now on, sing lullabies, brush the doll's hair, and whisper stories in the twilight. No one would ever separate them again. Mia's sobs faded to sniffles. then to silence. At last, the house was still. The doll, Annabelle, smiled with painted lips, content. She and her sister were finally together, free from secrets and lies, forever and ever. For more terrifying creepypasta horror stories, check out the playlist or the video on screen.